Welcome in, everyone. I'm Gerard Ramalho, and this is The Vegas Verdict. Here we take a look at local and national issues of interest. We offer legal perspective whenever possible, and ultimately, we hand down a verdict. Today, we are talking about voter ID, which, as of just a few days ago, is now officially going to be on the upcoming November ballot. We have a couple of special guests with us today, but first, we'd like to invite you to take a look at this video that explains a little bit more about this issue of voter ID. A voter ID initiative that would amend Nevada's constitution has qualified for the November ballot. It would require voters to show photo identification at the polls and also calls for an extra layer of ID verification with mail-in ballots, such as the last four digits of a driver's license or social security number. The issue has become highly partisan, pitting the governor, who is a proponent, against Democrat majority lawmakers. Opponents claim it could disenfranchise certain groups, specifically the elderly and minorities, who may not have the means to obtain an ID. Right, that was essentially a nutshell of what we're discussing today. Our two guests are Dave Gibbs with Repair the Vote, who essentially headed up this effort to get the voter ID initiative on the ballot. Thank you for being with us, Dave. And also Patrick Lindemann is with us, immigration attorney, immigration expert, and we are so happy to have your perspective as well. Dave, we'll start with you. Tell us about the initiative and also what it took to get this on the ballot this year.
Okay. Well, the initiative basically would amend the Nevada Constitution, require folks to show a government-issued photo ID when they vote in person. There are 9 different categories of IDs: driver's license, passport, military ID, tribal ID, concealed carry permit. If you are a government employee, that ID will work. If you are a university student in Nevada, that ID will work. And there's a couple others that off the top of my head I don't recall right at the moment. But the point is there's a list of IDs that will work. And what we're basically saying is you walk into a voting booth, you show your ID. It doesn't have to have your address on it. It's just got to be, you walk in, say, I'm Gerard Ramalho, and they take a look and go, yes, you are. And you can have a ballot. And that's all we're doing, is we're just trying to verify that the person who's coming in, who says who they say they are, is that actually that person.
I'm in that category of people who thought that this was already in place many years ago, and I believe that up until recently. But in fact, it's not. It's become a highly partisan issue, partly because there's this concern that people who aren't eligible are voting. And on the other side, there's this, concern or argument that, there are a lot of people who don't have an ID for whatever reason. They're elderly, or they can't get one, or they don't have the means to buy one, that sort of thing. Patrick, let's get you jumping in here. In terms of your clientele, you see a lot of immigrants who are vying for some type of status. How important, or where on the scale does voting measure in terms of what you see?
Well, one of the most important things to remember is, in order to vote, you have to be a United States citizen.
Right.
So if you're an undocumented individual, or if you have a lawful permanent resident card, commonly known as a green card, you cannot vote. And there are federal and state consequences. You can be federally and prosecuted in a state for unlawfully voting. The one area right now where I would have a little concern, because I have a lot of people who have just recently naturalized. Can they use their naturalization certificate to vote? And especially, I understand this initiative is going to take 2 times, but for those who are right on the wire to vote, and perhaps they don't have a driver's license, they don't have a social security card, will they be able to vote?
Right. You brought up a good point, too. We should probably mention that this would require a constitutional amendment, state constitution, which means it needs to pass twice. So even if it does pass this coming November, we have to wait another 2 years and vote again. And it has to pass again for it to actually change the Constitution. So, Dave, what are your thoughts on those arguments? I think he brings up a good point on the naturalization.
They need to have a photo ID. If the naturalization document doesn't have a photograph on it.
It does have
a photograph on it. Is it issued by the U.S. government?
Yes.
Okay. That should fall in the category of if they're able to use that for identification somewhere. Like if I walk in and I show my naturalization papers and it's got my picture on it, under the initiative, it's basically a government issued photo ID. So if the photo ID is issued as part of that, it should be acceptable.
And the really good thing, as of April of 2024, now when you apply for naturalization, you can also at the same time apply for a Social Security card. So that should solve the problem. But there could just be this one case where somebody didn't, and that would be my concern.
Well, the other part is, if I have been told correctly, once you get authorization to work in the United States, you get a Social Security card. You can get one.
Right. Or sometimes they have what they call a TIN number, which is different.
Tax ID number.
For those who have approved work authorization, they will get a Social Security card.
Right.
But there are those who are working unlawfully, but they still file taxes, and they do that via a TIN number, and so a temporary ID number, and so identification number. So but you're right. If you're working here lawfully, but again, I don't want to confuse. You have to be a U.S. citizen
Exactly.
to vote.
I was going to say,
and
if you're working here unlawfully, you're not a citizen.
Exactly.
You
So
can't vote anyway.
vote.
So
And-
it's a moot argument.
Right, exactly.
It's a non-argument.
I don't want anyone to think if you're not a U.S. citizen that you can vote, because again, if you ever try to naturalize and there's proof that you've unlawfully voted, or if you admit to it, you're not going to be able to naturalize.
Right. Yeah, they can stop you from becoming a citizen.
Absolutely.
How hard was it to gather enough support for this initiative, Dave?
The logistics of it was a challenge. I mean, we had volunteers, and the folks in Nevada were great. We had well over 100 volunteers all over the state, from almost every county in Nevada, out collecting signatures on this, going to events, going door to door, standing out in front of libraries, grocery stores, all of the places where you normally see people who are collecting signatures on petitions. So we had folks all over the state doing this, and that was great. Mostly it just takes time. The requirement was 102,362 signatures in order to qualify.
Right.
I figured because of the fact that some people sign the wrong county or the wrong district, that my goal was to turn in 140,000. All right.
Okay.
And so because state law requires that of that 102,362, a quarter of them have to come from each congressional district.
Yeah.
That was designed so that you can't get somebody in blanket Clark County, get 140,000 signatures in Clark County.
And it's not a fair
and
or
ignore
accurate
the rest of the state.
representation.
Yeah, and ignore the rest of the state. So I like the fact that they did that and required you to get them from each of the congressional districts. So we ended up turning in 180,000.
The issue of voter ID has become a right-leaning talking point, I guess, for lack of a better term. You hear all the politicians say we need voter ID. Is there support on the left as well? Because it seems to me this is kind of a common sense.
There have been two polls that have been done in the last 2 years. Just last month, in June, Fox News did a poll in Nevada, and of those people who said they support President Trump, 95% are in favor of voter ID. For those people who support, President Biden was the nominee. Those who support President Biden, 73% were in favor of voter ID. 84% of those who plan to vote this year are in favor of this.
Yeah.
So it crosses all demographics. It crosses races, parties, ages, genders. I mean, then last year the Nevada Independent did a poll back in February of 23, and it was 74% of Nevadans. So you're talking more than 3/4 of the people in Nevada are in favor of this. So it's a very popular thing. We had very few instances of people saying, we had people that didn't want to sign it, but at the same time, we had very few instances of people who were vocally opposed to what we were trying to do.
And could give you reasons why.
And could give us reasons why. Yes.
Right.
Well, logical reasons why.
There's a second part to this, and we're going to come back after a short break and discuss more about the mail-in procedure that we follow now, and there's additional requirements for identification on the mail-in component of this as well. So we'll take a quick break here. We'll be back with more of the Vegas verdict right after this.
If you've been injured in an accident, you don't have to go it alone. At Paul Paddle Law, we understand your injuries aren't just physical. They also bring financial burden and emotional strain. At our firm, it's not just about legal representation. It's about genuine care and commitment. Lock in the attention you deserve from your attorney. We'll get you on the path to recovery. Call Paul Paddle Law. Legal security when you need it.
Welcome back, everyone. We're having fun here behind the scenes talking about voter ID and our elections process in general, because it's gotten interesting with the mail-in requirement and you know, you've got same-day registration, you've got provisional ballots, we're waiting 2-3 weeks to find the results of elections, and all of this, I think, contributes to some of the controversies that are out there and the speculation that is this all on the up and up. Let's go back to the voter ID initiative. There's a second part that is a requirement. If it does pass, we're now going to be required to provide a certain form of ID on the mail-in ballots as well. Is that right?
Correct. What it will require is that the voter put, in addition to signing it, next to it there'll be a block, and in that block they've got to put the last four of their driver's license or the last four of their social security number. Again, that is a way of validating the fact that, you know, I'm Gerard Ramalho. Here's the last four of my driver's license. There's my signature, and they can verify that.
Yeah, that to me is not an imposition, because I'm at home. If I'm filling it out at home, I pull my wallet out, or I already know the last four of my social, or whatever it is, and you write it down. It's not an inefficiency, which there are inefficiencies in the process.
Well, you know, one of the things that little research I did at the election department, the machines that they use to verify the signatures that they run them through, the manufacturer only certifies them to 50%.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they check certain number of data points. They only certify them to 50%. And I don't know if they've changed it, but back in 2018, I think it was 2018 or 2020, the county reduced that to 40%.
But signatures change, right? Isn't that part of the problem?
That's part of the issue. You know, and so there is a process where if the machine kicks it out and says it doesn't match, then the process is that election officials will take the poll workers will take a look. You'll have two poll workers. By law, they have to be from different parties. And then they will take a look at the signature and run through the list just as if they were validating somebody's signature in person, and to say, yes, that's a valid signature. But you know, the point is the fact that this is just another way of making sure that the person who cast that ballot is that person.
Can I ask you a question
Sure.
as a Nevada voter and not as an immigration attorney?
Sure.
I've in the past collected other people's ballots, like my mother-in-law who's in assisted living, my wife is working, and I've taken them to the drop box. Is that going to change anything, that I can still just drop them off in the box?
This doesn't change any of that. All this changes is a requirement that you put in either the last four of a driver's license or the last four is a social security number. One of the arguments that somebody put down, well, what if you don't have a social security number? Right. And I go, well, if you are a citizen of the United States,
right, and
you are a year old, by law, you're required to have a social security card.
Yeah.
You can't work without a social security card. So
one of the
point
arguments
is every citizen is supposed to have a social security number. So you have at least that.
Right.
So if you don't have a driver's license, you've got your social security card.
And that's one of the arguments too, that people can't afford to go get one, or they don't have the means to stand in line at the DMV, or now everything's online.
Social security cards are free.
Okay. And there was also this thought that maybe the state should just issue everybody an ID.
That's expensive,
you know,
I imagine.
There was an argument that came up. Assemblyman Greg Hafen put a bill before the legislature last session, very similar to what we've done.
Yeah.
And they sent it off to the Fiscal Analysis Division, I think is what they call it, for a
State.
for a statement on what's this going to cost the state. And one of the questions came in is, what's it going to cost to give out free IDs? And the state came back and said, we have no idea how many people in Nevada don't have IDs. There's one organization that came out against this. They said they said 15% of Nevadans do not have photo IDs. I'm going, that's 500,000 people.
Yeah.
I find it hard to believe that 500,000 people in Nevada do not have photo IDs. Because you can't cash a check without a photo ID.
Right, right.
I mean, when you think of all the things that you need a photo ID to do, you can't get a job without one.
Yeah.
When you think about all the things that you need a photo ID to do in this country today, but the state said we have no idea.
What about this argument that there's a race issue involved with voter ID? I mean, let me get your thoughts on this, Pat. Do you see where this is somehow racist to require a voter ID?
Well, I do think there is some concern in disenfranchised communities or in minority communities where people don't have a driver's license, for example, because they don't drive a car.
Yeah.
And maybe they've never worked, especially elderly people who never got a Social Security card. I can't tell you what the numbers are, but there's certainly some concern about those communities.
Are we singling out a certain community with that?
You can't be on Medicare without a Social Security card.
Well, that's a good point as
You
well.
need a Social Security card to
right.
get Social Security. You need a Social Security card to get Medicare.
Right, but you have to be 62. So let's talk about somebody who isn't 62,
But,
right?
but the other part of it is like I said, by law, you have to have a Social Security number to fill out an income tax return.
Yeah.
If somebody, if you're a dependent, even if
Right.
you're a dependent who
Right.
never worked,
Right.
all right, you still have, you have to declare all your dependents, and you have to put their Social Security numbers on the 1040. So they have to have a Social
I mean,
Security
I
card
think the
for them
arguments
your-
for it are
you
pretty
know.
strong. I
Yeah.
understand some of the opposition concern. I just don't know how much.
I also know, and I think in some ways it's a standard comment. This hurts minorities and it hurts the underprivileged.
Yeah.
I think that argument has become very routine, and in many ways sometimes condescending.
Indefensible.
And condescending to some extent, saying because you're a minority you don't have a photo ID. You obviously don't know how to get one and I've had people actually tell me that.
But you're
I think that's wrong.
And that's
I
not
think
what
that's
I
an-
intended. But just to make sure, if you said a photo or a Social Security card, but you don't have to have a Social Security card, right? If you have a driver's license and that's got a picture, that's going to be good enough.
Well, the Social Security card doesn't have a picture. You have to have a picture ID.
Right, and so you
But-
can't just present a Social Security card.
No, Social Security
Okay.
number is only. Social Security number is
For
only
the mail-in.
for the mail-in ballot, not for voting in person.
So it's different voting in person versus mailing.
Yeah,
in the
you don't
ballot.
have to. You don't have to show a photo ID as part of mailing in your ballot.
If you vote in person, you have to show photo ID.
have to show photo ID.
So you won't accept a Social Security card at that point. You have to have.
You have to have a photo ID.
Okay.
Interesting. Yeah.
You know,
interesting.
and so it's just. Yeah, you have to have a
Here's
photo.
a question I'll throw out just for fun. Do we think that if voter ID passes, people will stop questioning election results and they'll just or is all of the argument, is all of this still going to continue? What do you think about that?
I think this is one issue that will put some folks at ease.
Yeah.
The other issue that you mentioned about the fact that accepting mail ballots or any absentee ballot after Election Day is another thing that causes concern. As I was saying, a friend of mine, right before the break, we were talking about it, or maybe during the break. Anyway, a friend of mine did a little test in the January 6th presidential. He mailed in his ballot 2 days after the election, and
Yeah.
it got counted.
Well, I would
And
hope
it should never have
yeah.
been counted. It should not have been accepted because it was mailed 2 days after the election.
I mean,
And that's part of the issue. Now they've got an issue up in Reno and in parts of Washoe County because they're closing the post office up there. And now when you mail something in Reno to another office in Reno, it goes to Sacramento and comes back.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so you're talking 2-3 days
Yeah.
minimum when you mail something from Reno to an office in Reno. That's going to impact people's ability to get their mail-in ballots in on time. So that's another.
That's a
issue.
whole
But
other initiative,
That's
though.
another issue.
Right. Yeah, that
That's
would be a
another-
whole-
But the point is, yeah, there's a concern, and I think the issue is ballots coming in late. I think the other concern is taking 10 days after the election to publish the official results.
Yeah.
Because all that's seen is, what's going on around here. So those I think are two of the other big issues. There are a lot of folks that have concerns about the mail-in ballots to begin with. because who's getting a mail-in ballot? Are they still registered to vote? Cleaning up the voter rolls. So those are, but I think the primary issues are voter ID, ballots being accepted after Election Day, and the amount of time it takes to publish the official results are the three things that bother Nevadans the most.
Well, and I would hope if this initiative does get passed, at least it will dispel the falsehood that thousands and thousands of undocumented individuals or lawful permanent residents are voting, because that's been an argument that consistently has been disproven. But if this is a move in that direction, it may be a positive thing
for both,
Right.
parties.
Well,
Actually,
absolutely.
I think that everybody benefits. We have essentially more transparency as far as process goes, and we can both rest assured.
Well, 36 states have already passed a form of voter ID.
Yeah.
So we are one of 14.
Yeah.
Okay. And so that's part of that. This is a thing that's very, very popular across the country.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned, by the polling that's been done, it's very popular here in Nevada.
Which is why it is going to be on the ballot this coming November.
Yep.
All right, we'll take another break here, gentlemen, and we'll come back with some closing thoughts, and then we'll do what we call hand down a Vegas verdict here in just a few moments. We'll be back with more of the Vegas verdict right after this.
Legal troubles require swift action, and there's only one attorney who's quick on his feet.
Legal troubles don't wait, and neither should you. I'm Tony Abatangelo, a former judge with 30 years' experience. I know the judicial system, and I know what will work for you in court.
When your circumstance requires a skilled negotiator who knows the law, tap into Tony. He's a former judge who can defend your rights. Call 707-7000.
All right, we are back, and today our topic is voter ID, which will be on the November ballot coming up this year. So we are trying to get educated about it. We've been discussing some of the pros and potential cons and how this is going to affect voting in the future. What we'd like to do now is just get a few closing thoughts. Dave, you're the one who kind of put this initiative out there, so give us your final thoughts. I think I know where you stand on this issue, but give me your closing thoughts on this.
Well, first of all, this is an idea that has been tried in Nevada many, many times. And the Democrat establishment, mostly out of Washington, D.C., has fought this in court and won every single time until this year. This is the first time we have beaten the Democrat leadership in the establishment out of D.C. in court. One of the things that I was very happy to hear at the end of it is the judge said it's time for the voters of Nevada to get a say on this issue. And so that's where we're at. Now the voters got a say. 36 states already have voter ID, some form or another. And you do not hear a lot of complaints out of those states from people saying, well, this is racist, this is, pick an ist. Okay,
Yeah.
This is you're not hearing complaints out of all those other states of people not being allowed to vote.
Yeah.
It's the law, it's required, and get an ID and go vote. There's certain personal responsibilities associated with being a citizen.
Yeah.
Everybody talks about how important it is to vote and what a privilege it is here in the U.S. Well, do what you get a driver's license so you can drive your car.
Yeah,
Get an ID so you can vote. So that's and it's an idea whose time has come here in Nevada, and it's very popular in this state, as the polling that I talked about earlier has shown.
Patrick, your final thoughts on this? Or
Well, first of all, thanks, Dave. I know you've done a lot of hard work on it, and I would not be a good attorney if I didn't tell you I need to look at it, research it, and then
Sure.
and then make a decision. But it's certainly worth something to consider.
Yeah. My thoughts, and since it's kind of my show, I get to give a couple of thoughts. I do think that voting is a privilege, and having looked at this issue somewhat, I think that, frankly, both sides, whatever party you are, I think everyone benefits from the transparency of it. Here's the requirement, you're eligible, you vote. Hopefully, my prayer is that we get rid of some of the allegation and the wondering, and is this fair, and is this valid, and is this legitimate? I don't know that this alone is going to do it. You know, we talked about the mail-in process and the waiting and the counting and those kinds of things. Obviously, people are going to question those things as well. But my hope is that hopefully this is a step in the right direction. That's my thought. So what we like to do here on the Vegas Verdict is hand down a verdict. And our question today, is Nevada ready for voter ID? So let's give a verdict. I'll give a countdown in 3, and we'll each say either yes or no or undecided. In 3, 2, 1.
Yes.
Decided.
All right. So this is yet another. In fact, we're on a track now to have many undecided and or hung jury decisions, I guess I should say. I don't know if that's my phone or somebody else's, but and I think that's a fair reflection of probably what our society as a whole is. I hope that people will educate themselves on this issue. I think it's an important issue, and all the issues are, but this one I think will hopefully quell some of the concerns that are out there. Gentlemen, thank you both for being here. We'll have you both back on another issue very soon, I'm sure.
Thanks for having us.
You betcha. Thank you for watching as well.
Get out and vote.
Yes, get out and vote. We
regardless.
do want people,
Right.
You know, if you don't vote, you can't complain, right?
Absolutely.
And that's something we all agree on. Thanks for watching The Vegas Verdict, everyone. If you have questions, you want to know more about this podcast, check out our website, vegasverdict.com. We are on Amazon, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We have a YouTube channel, and we also are interested in your opinions and your thoughts. If you have a subject that you'd like us to discuss, perhaps we'll even bring you in as a guest of The Vegas Verdict. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.